Once upon a time, in a prosperous kingdom nestled in the heart of Igbo land, there lived a king named Izobina. His palace, adorned with the finest carvings and ivory, stood as a testament to his wealth and power. Yet, despite his abundance, King Obina was known for his arrogance. He believed himself to be invincible, above all others, and wiser than his council of elders. The king ruled with a heavy hand and often dismissed the needs of his people. Farmers would bow before him, pleading for fair taxation, and widows would cry out for justice, but King Obina would wave them off with a scoff. "I am Izobina, the chosen of the gods. Who among you can teach me anything I do not already know?" he often boasted. One fateful morning, a peculiar beggar arrived in the bustling marketplace of the kingdom. His name was Nkem. He was dressed in rags, with a walking stick that seemed older than the hills. His face was weathered, but his eyes sparkled with intelligence. Despite his appearance, Nkem had an aura of mystery that made people stop and stare. Nkem began weaving through the market, speaking to anyone who would listen. "I bring a riddle," he said, "a riddle so profound that even the wisest man in this kingdom cannot solve it." His words spread like harmattan fire, and soon, whispers of the mysterious beggar reached the king's ears. King Obina, always eager to prove his superiority, summoned the beggar to the palace. Nkem entered the grand hall, his gait slow but steady. The king sat on his golden throne, surrounded by his chiefs and guards. "Who dares claim that there exists a riddle too difficult for me?" the king thundered. Nkem bowed deeply and smiled. "Your Majesty, I have traveled far and wide, and I have heard of your unmatched wisdom. I thought it only fitting to present my humble riddle to such a great king." Intrigued and slightly flattered, the king leaned forward. "Speak, then, and let me show you that there is nothing beyond my grasp." Nkem cleared his throat and began, "Your Majesty, imagine this: there is a small bird that can neither fly nor walk, yet it moves faster than the swiftest horse. It feeds on nothing but the air, yet it grows stronger with every passing moment. What is this bird?" The king furrowed his brow and stroked his beard. He called for his council of elders, his advisors, and even the royal storyteller. Yet, no one could decipher the riddle. The hours turned into days, and the king's frustration grew. He began losing sleep, pacing the halls of his palace and snapping at his servants. On the third day, King Obina summoned Nkem once more. "Enough of this foolishness," he barked. "Reveal the answer to your riddle, or I will have you thrown into the darkest dungeon." Nkem, unshaken, chuckled softly. "Your Majesty, I will reveal the answer, but only if you promise to grant me one request, no matter how small." The king, desperate to preserve his pride, agreed. "Speak, beggar. What is the answer?" Nkem's smile widened as he replied, "The bird, Your Majesty, is time. Time flies faster than the swiftest horse, yet it has no wings or legs. It consumes nothing but the air, yet it grows with every moment that passes." The hall fell silent as the weight of the answer settled over everyone. The king's face turned red with embarrassment, for he knew the riddle had humbled him. But true to his word, he asked, "What is your request, beggar?" Nkem bowed low. "Your Majesty, my request is simple. For one day, I ask that you trade places with me. Let me wear your royal robes and sit on your throne, while you wear my rags and walk the streets as a beggar." Gasps erupted from the crowd. The chiefs whispered among themselves, and the guards exchanged uneasy glances. But the king, bound by his promise, had no choice but to agree. The next morning, Nkem was dressed in the king's finest robes and seated on the golden throne. King Obina, meanwhile, donned Nkem's tattered rags and stepped into the streets. As the day unfolded, the king experienced the life of his people for the first time. He walked barefoot on the dusty roads, feeling the scorching sun on his back. He begged for food but was met with scornful looks and turned away faces. He listened to the cries of children and the laments of farmers struggling to make ends meet. By sunset, King Obina returned to the palace, his feet blistered and his heart heavy. Nkem, still seated on the throne, greeted him with a knowing smile. "Your Majesty, what have you learned today?" The king fell to his knees before the beggar. "I have learned that a king is nothing without his people. I have seen their pain, their struggles, and their resilience. I have been blind to their needs, but no longer. You have taught me the ultimate lesson in humility, Nkem." Nkem rose from the throne and placed a hand on the king's shoulder. "Your Majesty, true greatness lies not in wealth or power, but in serving those who depend on you. A wise king listens to his people and rules with compassion." From that day forward, King Obina changed his ways. He became a just and humble ruler, earning the love and respect of his people. And as for Nkem, the clever beggar, he vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for generations. Thus, the kingdom thrived, not because of the king's might, but because of his newfound wisdom and humility. And so, the Igbo people would tell the tale of the clever beggar and the foolish king, a story that reminded them that even the mightiest can learn from the humblest.